The kids are already counting their millions. The father's last will and testament is being read with $44 million on the line, but instead of cash, each of them gets a single silver bar, a nod to the betrayal of Judas. Etched into the metal are the words, "Honor your father and mother." Like this video and right where you are watching us from, we will be happy to send you our regards. The Kingsley Manor sat on a wind-battered bluff above Cape St. Julian, its tall windows staring seaward like a regiment of silent sentries. Inside, every polished surface refused to admit dust or secrets, but lately the chandeliers seemed to tremble with rumors none of the staff dared voice aloud. It was late November, 3 days after the first frost crystallized the roses, and Eleanor Kingsley stood at the gallery rail outside the master suite, counting the rhythmic hiss of her husband's oxygen machine. Between each intake and mechanical sigh, she heard her own pulse, steady but stretching thin as though life had become a tightrope strung over a canyon of lawyer's parchment. Richard Kingsley, shipping magnate, reluctant philanthropist, and, according to Forbes, worth $44 million even after last year's trade route collapse, was dying slowly in the room behind her. Pancreatic cancer had consumed his appetite for negotiation long before it ravaged his body, yet in the final weeks he clung to one obsession with the tenacity of a barbed hook. His will. Eleanor remembered the early drafts, a stately fortune divided with the mathematical grace of a bridge arch, but those pages lay shredded in a bronze wastebasket the night Richard called her to his bedside. "They're strip mining my memory, Ellie," he rasped, voice brittle as flaking parchment. He spoke of their adult children, Michael, whose laugh once filled the orchard with reckless promise, and Celeste, whose piano recitals once left the old servants misty-eyed. According to Richard, those same hands now fed him whispered poison. "Mother never loved you. Mother wants the houses, mother hides debts," until each venomous sentence thickened the air around his pillow. Eleanor hadn't believed it, wouldn't believe it, until the night she caught Michael pacing the sick room like a wolf skulking between candle shadows, practicing lines of false comfort he would deliver to his father if she entered. In that instant, trust shattered, like thin crystal struck by an unseen mallet. The shards glittered, but she could never raise them to her lips again. Now, as dawn leaked through leaded panes, Eleanor descended the main staircase, velvet slippers silent on age-smoothed mahogany. The hallway smelled of beeswax and wood smoke, but beneath the domestic perfume lingered the metallic tang of impending grief. At the dining room threshold, she paused. Michael and Celeste already sat at the vast table, posture too perfect, faces too bright, as if they'd rehearsed the tableau. A thin silver laptop rested between them, glowing with spreadsheets Eleanor could not read from the doorway. Line after line of asset valuations ending in neat green columns. "Mother," Celeste said, rising with feline grace, "we were just reviewing expenses. With father's care escalating, you'll be relieved we've arranged." Eleanor lifted a hand, palm outward. "Your father's comfort surpasses cost." The words emerged calm, but something within her chest flicked like a struck match. Michael's smile tightened. "Naturally, but liquidity is essential. We can't jeopardize future obligations." Future obligations. The phrase settled over the table like dust on an heirloom portrait. Light from the bay windows flared off a silver candlestick at the table's center, dazzling Eleanor's vision. The candlestick, a wedding gift from Richard's mother, bore an inscription from Psalm 119, "Thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path." She traced the phrase in memory and felt its irony sting. Truth should illuminate, yet here silver merely reflected greed. In the hallway clock, a brass pendulum marked seconds with the patience of a guillotine's arc. Eleanor folded her hands. "Your father's attorney will arrive tomorrow," she said. "All questions may wait." Celeste's expression faltered. Michael's pen clicked like a trigger resetting. For a breath, no one moved. Then, almost too soft to notice, Celeste drummed manicured nails on the laptop lid in a rhythm Eleanor recognized from childhood. 3 taps, a pause, 2 taps. It was the code she and Michael once used to share secrets. Now it rasped across the table like a scar reopening. Upstairs, the oxygen machine paused, a hitch that turned the whole house towards silence. Then the hiss resumed, but the moment left an aftertaste of approaching vacancy. Eleanor excused herself, feeling the children's gaze slide over her shoulders like daggers searching for a gap in armor. Outside, late autumn wind rattled bare branches against stained glass, each tap a Morse code omen no one bothered to translate. The path to tomorrow's reading of the will felt suddenly narrow, hedged by thorn and frost. Yet as Eleanor climbed the grand staircase, one thought steadied her. Richard had promised a final lesson. She only prayed their children would have ears to hear it. Night in the manor arrived like a theater curtain, heavy and velvet black, muffling ordinary sounds until every whisper felt amplified by echo. In the sick room, a single lamp burned beside Richard's bed, casting warm pools of gold across his parchment skin. Eleanor sat in the high-backed chair, knitting needles idle in her lap. She watched his chest rise shallowly beneath the quilt embroidered with compass roses, a map she'd stitched during their first voyage together, when fortune still smelled of salt and possibility. Richard's eyes opened. Once storm blue, they had faded to the gray of worn denim, but even dim they still sparked when they found her. "Ellie," he breathed, "promise me one thing." She leaned close, the vanilla scent of his lip balm mingling with antiseptic. "Anything, love. Do not let bitterness lodge in your bones when tomorrow's silver falls." His lips quirked, almost a smile. Eleanor frowned. "Silver?" He coughed, weak but satisfied. "All stories need a coin. Ours will pay in lessons." She wanted clarity, but morphine tugged him back into murky waters. His eyelids fluttered. Sleep reclaimed him. Eleanor remained, heart beating out questions the night refused to answer. Beyond the curtains, ocean surf boomed like distant artillery, and the wind carried salt that stung old window frames, wood remembering storms long past. Downstairs in the library paneled with West African mahogany, Celeste poured cognac into 2 cut-glass tumblers, though she rarely drank. Michael paced before the hearth, firelight etching restlessness across his angular face. "He's leaving it to her," he muttered. "Every useless statue, every bond." Celeste swirled her glass. "Not possible." "The draft's father showed me named us co-beneficiaries. If mother manipulates," she cut herself off, throat twitching. Michael stopped pacing. His gaze flicked to the heavy curtain that concealed a wall safe, combination known only to Richard, and perhaps to whoever tended him daily. Footsteps creaked in the corridor. Celeste set her tumbler down, crystallized fear fracturing her poise. The door opened. Eleanor stepped inside, candle in hand. Shadows jittered across the leather-bound volumes. She spoke softly. "Your father sleeps. Let us honor the hush." Yet the candlelight revealed her gaze, bright as struck steel. For a moment, Michael thought he saw resolve there, forged with a heat he'd forgotten his mother possessed. When she left, the room seemed colder, though the fire still roared. Later, long after midnight, the children met again in the butler's pantry, voices a conspiratorial hiss. Celeste unfolded color print spreadsheets, cost projections, trust disbursement charts. Medical expenses flagged in red. "We have to secure our birthright," she whispered. Michael, biting his thumb knuckle, nodded. "If the will contradicts, we contest." Their plan felt airtight, but neither spoke of the prickle along their spines, the sense that tomorrow might belong to a narrative they could not edit. In her room, Eleanor sat at an antique vanity brushing silver hair. She studied her reflection. Fine lines like riverbeds, eyes rimmed with exhaustion's bruise. She thought of her children as toddlers toddling through sunlit orchards, fists sticky with peach juice. What alchemy turns laughter to ledger lines? A tear slipped, more from weariness than sadness, and she wiped it away before it traced her cheek. On the dresser lay a tarnished silver coin Richard once found in Gibraltar, a Roman denarius stamped with a serpent. He used to say every fortune carries its own fable. She laid the coin on her palm, its chill a promise of dawn. Moonlight slid across the floorboards, pooling near a cedar hope chest. From within, Eleanor withdrew a slender wooden box and opened it. Inside, two small silver bars nestled in velvet, each engraved with an austere commandment, "Honor thy father and thy mother." The bars glimmered like captured moonbeams. She traced the words, pulse steadying to the oath they demanded. Then she closed the lid, eyes resolute. Dawn would sharpen more than just sunlight. Dawn crept into the manor on cat feet, brushing frost from balustrades and prying secrets from dreams. The lawyers arrived at 9, black overcoats flapping like ravens' wings as they crossed the marble foyer. Robert Halsey, Richard's executor, nodded to Michael and Celeste, who wore polite smiles stretched thin as gold leaf. They gathered in the solarium, Richard's favorite room, where winter light spilled through arched windows onto a long oak table. Coffee steamed, untouched. At the head sat an empty leather chair, its absence heavier than any occupant. Eleanor entered last, clad in slate blue wool, silver coin dangling from a fine chain at her throat. Halsey cleared his voice. "Mr. Kingsley requested the will be read whether or not he could attend." The children exchanged glances. Celeste's lips twitched downward. Michael's knuckles whitened around his fountain pen. Halsey unfolded the document, parchment pages rustling like wings preparing for flight. He began with customary bequests, charitable donations, staff allowances, maintenance funds for the Kingsley Maritime Scholarship. The children shifted, impatience threading their posture. Then Halsey paused, gaze flicking upward. "To my beloved wife, Eleanor Mary Clark Kingsley," he read, "I bequeath the entirety of my residual estate, including all liquid assets, real property, and intellectual holdings, for she has been harbor and compass." Eleanor inhaled, chest tightening with gratitude and grief. Celeste's pen clattered to the floor, Michael's jaw slackened. Halsey continued, voice unshaken. "To my children, Michael Richard Kingsley and Celeste Grace Kingsley, I leave symbols rather than sums." From a leather satchel, he withdrew 2 velvet pouches, each bearing the Kingsley crest. He set them before the stunned siblings. Inside each pouch lay a 3-ounce bar of sterling silver. The engraving gleamed under winter sun. "Honor thy father and thy mother as the Lord thy God hath commanded thee." Beneath the commandment, a smaller line. 30 pieces bought betrayal, may these few purchase remembrance. Silence loomed, vast as the Atlantic beyond the windows. Celeste's fingers trembled on the velvet. The bar felt heavier than lead. Michael swallowed, throat burning. Eleanor watched, tears shining but unshed as comprehension bled across their faces. This was no inheritance, but an epitaph to entitlement. Halsey concluded. "Mr. Kingsley requested a final note be read aloud." He unfolded a slip in Richard's shaky handwriting. "Children, silver tarnishes when neglected. Polish your hearts before they match the metal." The wind outside gusted, rattling panes like distant applause. Celeste's face blanched. Michael closed his eyes as though flinching from a blow. Eleanor stood. Her voice, quiet yet resonant, filled the room. "Your father loved you enough to teach even now." She reached across the table, fingertips brushing each silver bar. "Lessons are gifts, too, if you accept them." No one replied. Halsey gathered documents, pens scraped signatures confirming receipt of what? A fortune condensed into moral currency. The solarium door opened. Cold air slid inside, carrying brine and the forlorn cry of a gull. As Eleanor escorted the lawyers out, Celeste remained seated, staring at her reflection in the polished bar. A daughter framed by admonition. Michael rose slowly, pouch in hand like a man carrying his own shadow. At the threshold, he paused beside his mother. His voice cracked. "Did you know?" She met his gaze. "I knew your father's heart." Outside, sunlight struck the frost-rimmed garden, igniting crystals into brief stars. Eleanor realized she felt lighter. Not because 22 million notes of grief had vanished, but because the weight now had purpose. Somewhere overhead, unseen but certain, the tide was turning. A nor'easter swept across Cape St. Julian, the night after the will reading, drumming rain against the manor like a verdict demanding retrial. Lightning forked beyond the bluffs, illuminating salt-spattered windows and exposing, for split-second flashes, the turbulence inside the Kingsley children's eyes. Celeste stalked the second-floor corridor in a silk robe the color of bruised orchids, her bare feet silent on Persian runners that once felt like inheritance underfoot. At the far end of the hall, Michael's study door stood ajar, lamplight spilling onto the carpet like a confession no one wanted to clean. She entered without knocking. Michael sat at his mahogany desk, the silver bar resting on a legal pad, its engraved commandment reflecting twin tongues of candle flame. He had polished it for an hour, trying to erase the sting of its message, but each swipe of cloth only sharpened the letters. A tumbler of scotch trembled in his hand. "Father humiliated us," Celeste said, voice low but serrated. One silver slab and a Sunday school scolding after decades of standing by. Michael's mouth twitched. "Standing by?" he repeated, soft as soot. "We were exiled to boarding schools while she gave him harbor and compass." Celeste's pulse ratcheted. "Then we deserve the harbor fees." She produced a slim folder. Inside were color copies. Richard's earlier will drafts. True drafts. Not the charred decoys they'd seen, naming them equal heirs. "I made scans the night he first showed me." She laid a fingertip on the date stamp. 6 months before his diagnosis. A lucid billionaire signed these pages. Mother guided his hand to change them. Michael's eyes narrowed. Rain pounded harder, a drum roll for conspiracy. "Undue influence," he whispered. "If we prove it, probate court can void the latest will." He raised his glass, but scotch sloshed over the rim. Celeste plucked the tumbler away. "Clear heads," she warned, though her own heart thrummed like a bass drum. Lightning flickered, revealing the silver bar's mirrored surface. Celeste saw her reflection there, features warped. For the first time, she wondered if the admonition was prophecy as much as punishment. She shoved the thought into a locked drawer of memory. Downstairs, Eleanor stood by the foyer's arched window, candle cupped in her palm. With Richard gone, he slipped away at dawn. Breath fluttering out like a candle the wind refused to spare, she expected grief to drown all peripheral fear. Yet a new storm brewed in her marrow. The children's silence, since the reading, was not surrender, but recoil. She had seen Michael's jaw tighten, Celeste's pupils dilate, prey species preparing poison, not flight. Behind her, the butler Angus cleared his throat. "Madam, the undertaker confirmed 10 a.m. for the private viewing." His voice trembled around the syllables private, as if the word might be contested property. Eleanor thanked him, then traced the silver denarius at her throat. "All stories need a coin." Richard's last lucid declaration echoed between thunderclaps. In the library, she unlocked the cedar hope chest and withdrew a second wooden box, this one containing letters Richard had written over the years, anniversary notes, travel musings, drafts of speeches he never delivered. She leafed until she found a sealed envelope marked Eleanor, open only if the waters rise. Her pulse hiccuped. Waters were indeed rising, greed swollen and storm-whipped. She slid a letter opener beneath the wax seal. Hook. You never know which words from the dead will resurrect danger instead of comfort. Inside, Richard's pen still wobbled with illness, but intent burned like a lighthouse lamp. Ellie. Should the children trade love for coin, deliver the bank key in this envelope to Inspector Dorsey. He knows where to find the safety deposit box. Inside is the video and the ledger, their whispers recorded, their schemes costed. Truth will sail faster than slander if you let it. Your harbor is wide enough for storms. Our Eleanor's breath snagged. A bank key. Evidence of her children's machinations preserved by Richard's foresight. Rain hammered, thunder boomed. She felt both shielded and broken. By dawn, storm clouds fled east, leaving the manor bruised but standing. Richard's casket lay in the chapel parlor, cedar polished to a mirror yawning old grief. Only immediate family and the lawyer were invited to the viewing, yet the emotional distance between attendees yawned wider than the Atlantic. Michael and Celeste approached the casket side by side, silver bars tucked into coat pockets like loaded dice. Celeste leaned close to her father's waxen features, whispering, "This is not finished, Daddy." Michael said nothing, but the tendons in his neck stood out like mooring lines strained against tide. Eleanor, a respectful distance away, watched their shoulders, searching not for sorrow but for calculation. She found both. After the viewing, Halsey pulled Eleanor aside. Rumor already circulates that Michael and Celeste are consulting probate litigation. Eleanor pressed the bank key between gloved fingers. "Then the waters have risen," she murmured. She requested a discreet coffee with Inspector Milton Dorsey, a sharp-eyed officer who once saved Richard from a blackmailing deckhand. Dorsey agreed to meet in town at dusk. Afternoon light slanted through stained glass as the family gathered in the dining room for what should have been a condolence luncheon. Instead, it became an unspoken negotiation. Celeste toyed with her spoon. Father's mental decline began before his final revisions. Eleanor glanced at the portraits of Kingsley ancestors lining the walls, merchants, captains, one rumored privateer. Every face seemed to observe the table, testimony in oil and gilt. Michael leaned forward. "We will file an injunction to pause probate until an independent psych evaluation reviews his capacity." The words clanged like iron on anvil. Eleanor set down her teacup. "Your father's oncologist will testify he remained lucid." Celeste's smile curved razor thin. "Doctors can misjudge burnout." "Lawyers do not." Eleanor's pulse drummed. She recalled Richard's plea, "Polish your hearts." Yet love for her children warred with duty to Richard's memory. A cold, briny wind invaded the room despite closed windows. She rose. "You have chosen litigation over mourning. I choose to honor your father." She exited, leaving silence and the faint scent of bergamot in her wake. Celeste exhaled, shoulders trembling, not with grief but with thrill. Battle was engaged. Michael unfolded the folder of drafts and tapped them against the table, spine stiff. "We'll lodge tomorrow," he said, yet part of him faltered. The silver bar's weight bruised inside his coat pocket, each engraved word branding his ribs. He would never admit how those words echoed during sleepless hours, a drumbeat of accusation. Dusk painted the town's harbor district in copper and violet when Eleanor arrived at Dorsey's modest office. Seagulls keened overhead, scavenging twilight. Inside, Dorsey leaned over his desk reading Richard's letter, brows crawling to his hairline. Eleanor handed him the bank key. "He trusted you." Dorsey nodded gravely, dialing a secure line to judge-confirmed chain of evidence procedure. They traveled to First Seaside Bank after hours. The manager unlocked the vault. Inside box 147 lay a flash drive and a leather-bound ledger. Dorsey glanced at Eleanor. "We'll image the drive at headquarters." On the ride back, Eleanor pressed forward to the car window, city lights blurring. She felt like a ship sailing black water, compass needles spinning between north and remorse. Back at the manor, Michael rummaged in Richard's study, seeking any document to cast doubt on the final will. Celeste scoured desk drawers, but golden keys, antique pens only deepened emptiness. In the wastebasket, she found crumpled sketches of the silver bar engraving, evidence that Richard planned the lesson long before he lay dying. "He wanted to brand us Judas," she hissed. Michael's cheeks flamed. For a moment, rage eclipsed uncertainty. "Then we'll return the favor. Mother will know betrayal." Lightning flickered outside, though the storm had passed. A strobe from paparazzi flashed across the gates. News had leaked. Shipping magnate leaves. Widow entire fortune. Children receive symbolic silver. Social feeds erupted. Michael sank into Richard's leather chair as if into quicksand. Celeste clenched fists until nails left crescent moons in her palms. The public now savored their disgrace before courts convened. In the upstairs corridor, Eleanor paused outside Richard's empty sick room. She stepped in, closed the door behind her. The oxygen equipment was gone, leaving only the faint medicinal smell of endings. She knelt beside the bed, whispering, "I have the box, my love." Moonlight draped the quilt's compass roses. She traced a cardinal point and felt the ship of her life tack into fiercer winds. Morning broke brittle and bright. Inspector Dorsey met Eleanor in the Manor Library with grim efficiency. The ledger tracks wire transfers. Your children paid a private neurologist to write preliminary notes about possible cognitive decline, notes they never shared with Richard. He placed a printed email chain on the desk, Celeste instructing the doctor to remain discreet until official capacity challenge. Eleanor's stomach clenched. The flash drive contained worse. A hidden smart home recording Richard purchased after suspecting manipulation. Footage showed Michael muttering near Richard's bedside, weaving doubt about Eleanor's fidelity, inventing secret Swiss accounts. Another file captured Celeste rehearsing tears before a mirror. Dorsey exhaled. Probate judge will consider this decisive evidence of undue influence against them. Eleanor felt grief and vindication braid into something heavier. Exposing the children meant legal ruin, perhaps prison for fraud. Richard's final lesson aimed to save their souls by wounding their pride, but would public disgrace sever them forever? She clutched the denarius pendant. The serpent's worn image pressed her palm. Reminder betrayal is older than law. Outside the library, Celeste approached, heel clicks echoing like pistol hammers. Mother, we've retained counsel. You will be served. Eleanor's breath clouded the cold air between them. I have evidence of your deceit. Celeste's face froze, but resolve flashed. You forged Father's final will. She pivoted, stalking away before Eleanor could answer. Dorsey sighed. They'll strike before hearing tomorrow. Withhold nothing, Mrs. Kingsley. He departed to prepare affidavits. Eleanor stood alone amid dusty sunlight, ledger pages fluttering in her grip like trapped birds. That evening, Michael crashed into the foyer, hair wild. Mother, tabloids claim we're thieves. Rain returned, drumming roof tiles. Eleanor gestured toward the silver bar protruding from his coat pocket. Your father's lesson finds many students. Michael's face contorted. Lesson? He's dead, and you parade virtue. She offered the ledger. Read. He scanned pages, color draining. Celeste burst in, phone flashing notifications. Michael hurled the ledger across the marble, pages fanned like white flags of surrender, but war intensified. You set us up, he roared. Thunder rattled windows. Eleanor's cheeks felt cold. Richard set conditions for love. Honesty. Celeste advanced, tears mixing with fury. Honesty, her voice cracked. He listened to spinal fluid pumps more than his own children. Eleanor flinched. Truth sometimes cuts breeder and blade equally. The doorbell clanged. Process servers. Michael and Celeste's attorneys earlier than promised. Papers exchanged, voices echoed. Dorsey's cruiser lights flared outside, subpoenas for medical fraud. The foyer became intersection of justice and heartbreak. Celeste swayed, silver bar sliding from her pocket, clanging on marble, a bell tolling pride. She crumpled to her knees, hands over ears. Michael backed against the banister, panting. Eleanor stepped forward, tears spilling now. This ends here. Contest the will, but face the recordings. She offered the flash drive like a chalice. Repent in court or in conscience, but choose. Michael's eyes darted. Celeste sobbed, whispering, He loved us once. Eleanor knelt, gathering her daughter into trembling arms. He loves you still. Sometimes love delivers silver, not gold, to heal the wound money makes. Michael slid down the wall, gaze fixed on the fallen bar's engraving. Thunder groaned, lightning etched shadows sharper. For the first time, Eleanor saw something break inside him, perhaps the dam of entitlement, releasing grief. Night swallowed voices. Somewhere distant, a buoy bell moaned across black water, marking safe passage for ships that dared the storm. In the manor, silence finally settled, not peace but possibility. A pause before verdicts both legal and emotional. FOMO whisper. Dawn will bring the first courtroom clash, where silver bars weigh heavier than gold testimony, and a mother must decide whether justice without mercy is victory at all. An iron-gray dawn lowered itself over the courthouse like a portcullis. Fog curled from the harbor, weaving between columns and swallowing the murmured gossip of reporters who had slept in their vans just to catch a glimpse of the Kingsleys. Eleanor stepped from Inspector Dorsey's sedan and felt the courthouse steps tilt, not because of vertigo, but because every camera flash reshaped the ground beneath her. In her gloved hand, she clutched a sealed envelope, the ledger's certified copy, and a forensic affidavit verifying the recordings. Another envelope, identical in weight yet heavier in consequence, remained locked in the sedan. Mercy held in reserve. Inside, marble floors echoed with a cacophony of heels, whispered alliances, and the rustle of legal pads. Courtroom 4. A smelled of old pine and newer fear. Judge Sybil Hartford, famed for her fondness of crisp fact over theatrical flourish, presided beneath a carved frieze depicting blind justice holding balanced scales. Yet Eleanor wondered, could scales ever balance when one pan held a mother's love and the other her children's deceit? Michael and Celeste sat at the plaintiff's table, flanked by suit-pressed attorneys, the firm of Rayburn and Phelps, known as the Sharks with Law Degrees. Their expressions flickered between righteous indignation and flickers of doubt. Michael's silver bar lay hidden in his briefcase, but he kept touching the latch, as if reassurance came from feeling the metal's chill rather than its lesson. Celeste's bar became her paperweight, an odd choice that left paralegals whispering. She claimed it steadied documents. In truth, its weight reminded her why she fought. The courtroom's wooden pews filled with press, minor shareholders hoping the inheritance might trickle their way, and townsfolk drawn by the spectacle of a family cannonade. At the back, a cluster of Cape Saint. Julian churchwomen clutched rosaries, whispering prayers for everyone, guilt and innocence be damned. Eleanor spied Angus the butler seated among them, hat in lap, gaze sorrowful. Judge Hartford opened proceedings with the precision of a metronome. Rayburn, Michael, and Celeste's lead counsel rose. Your Honor, we contend undue influence, diminished capacity, and fraudulent concealment. We ask the court to freeze the estate pending a full evidentiary review. He projected an image of Richard's earlier will drafts, their signatures crisp. These, not that dubious final document, expressed Mr. Kingsley's true intent Halsey. Executor and Eleanor's advocate for this phase countered with deathbed contemporaneous notes and a neurologist's sworn statement on Richard's clarity. Hartford listened, hawk-eyed. You will each present evidence. I will decide freezing motions after witness examination. Mallet tapped, no flourish. First witness, Dr. Ira Stembridge, Richard's oncologist. He testified that even in late stages, Richard could parse complicated treatment plans and sign revised power of attorney forms accurately. Rayburn drilled him on fentanyl doses. Could medication cloud his judgment? The doctor admitted possibility, but insisted monitoring logs showed Richard declined heavy opioids until final 48 hours. Hartford scribbled. Next came Doctor. Mark Corman, neurologist, clandestinely approached by Celeste. Defense introduced his private emails, Celeste requesting preliminary notes to question capacity. Rayburn objected, but Hartford admitted, relevance high, authenticity stipulated by chain of custody. Corman squirmed, perspiration shining. Under Dorsey's cross, he confessed the children offered sizable consulting honoraria. Gasps rippled. Michael avoided Celeste's eyes. Lunchtime recess found Eleanor alone in a narrow hallway lined with historic maritime prints. She pressed palm to the marble sill, letting chill bleed tension. Dorsey approached. Ledger and recordings did their first job, but Hartford wants context. Eleanor unfastened the necklace, the denarius warm from her skin, and closed it inside her fist like a secret prayer. Context costs, she whispered. Court reconvened. Rayburn called Celeste to testify. She stepped to the stand, silk blouse immaculate, but voice a fraction too high. She spoke of a childhood overshadowed by a mother who feared losing status more than nurturing bonds. She described Eleanor allegedly coaching nurses to limit Richard's visitors. Eleanor absorbed each blade silently. Half-truths cut deepest. Halsey rose for cross. He produced Richard's bedside audio, Celeste's rehearsed tears, Celeste's face drained. You Spied on us, she breathed. Halsey's tone never wavered. Your father protected his estate, not spied. Distinction matters. Hartford asked the bailiff to replay the clip. Celeste, burying her face in open palms, became front-page photo fodder. Michael, witnessing his sister's fracture, requested postponement of his own testimony. Hartford denied. He took the stand. Jaw set. He blamed desperation. I worried Mother's spending would dwindle the shipping foundations. Cross-examination revealed bank statements. Michael withdrew $50,000 last month to pay Rayburn's retainer. Hardly desperation, Halsey noted. The silver bar weighed heavier in Michael's blazer as he stepped down. Outside, dusk seeped violet through courthouse windows. Proceedings adjourned until morning. Hartford deferred freezing decision. As gavel echoed, Eleanor exhaled a breath she felt she'd been holding since Richard's diagnosis. But victory smelled of stale varnish, not triumph. In the foyer, Michael confronted her. Eyes red-rimmed, he shoved the silver bar into her hands. Take your sermon back. His voice cracked. Do you prefer us ruined or repentant? She closed his fingers around the metal. Repentance wears ragged clothes. Ruin can tailor new garments. Cryptic words, but grief seldom drafts clear sentences. He turned away, shoulders hunched like a rigging slack under sudden squall. That night at the manor, Eleanor stood before Richard's portrait. Candlelight jittered across his painted features. She whispered, Your lesson scalds them. In the quiet, she almost heard him answer, Truth scalds before it cleanses, but she also remembered his fear, losing them forever. She strode to her desk, retrieving the second envelope, the mercy copy. Tomorrow, perhaps, she would decide. Rain returned, less savage, but steady, each drop a ticking clock. Court resumed with Inspector Dorsey's testimony. He authenticated the ledger, explained wiring paths leading to hush payments. Hartford's brow pinched. Rayburn launched a counteroffensive. Crooked private investigator tricked by Mrs. Kingsley. Dorsey remained granite. His service record bore few cracks, but Hartford sought another perspective. She summoned Angus the butler, unlisted witness. Surprise flickered across both legal benches. Angus stooped, yet resolute, shared 33 years in Kingsley service. He testified Richard asked him to install the smart home system. He feared whispers, ma'am. Wanted proof. Rayburn questioned motive. Angus raised watery blue eyes. Mr. Kingsley called truth an anchor heavier than gossip. Even Hartford's stern expression softened. Midday, rumors spread through courthouse corridors. Rayburn had discovered a potential time-stamped video showing Richard drifting into delirium hours before signing the final will revision. If valid, capacity could crumble. Halsey scrambled to verify. Dorsey hunted digital footprints. Meanwhile, an internal storm brewed in Celeste. During recess, she retreated to the restroom, clasping the silver bar with white knuckles. She remembered child Michael daring her to leap off the yacht rail into dark water, her father's laughter when she emerged sputtering, and her mother's wool blanket around her shoulders. The memory cracked the facade she'd cultivated. Tears blurred mirror image, a woman armored in grievance who scarcely recognized the salt on her cheeks. Michael paced the hallway, tie loosened. He saw Celeste exit, eyes swollen. He began to speak, but Rayburn yanked him aside, phone in hand. Video found, night of signing, your father confused, asks for deceased brother. Michael's pulse soared, hope and guilt twined. Can we subpoena? Rayburn nodded. They would present after lunch. Yet fate played a different card. In the judge's chamber, Halsey produced Richard's hospice logs. He took no narcotics that evening. Furthermore, Dorsey reported the video metadata mismatched. It was recorded 2 nights later after meds increased. Rayburn's trump dissolved into smoke. Hartford dismissed the evidence as inadmissible, cautioning counsel about fishing in muddy waters. The tide shifted again when Halsey called Dr. Imani Rivers, clinical ethicist. She testified on narrative capacity, the ability to weave coherent life stories even under illness. She played an excerpt, Richard dictating letter drafts to maritime scholars, referencing a 1979 voyage with precise coordinates. Hartford noted amplitude and nod. Michael's hopes sank. But surprising everyone, Eleanor asked to speak. Counsel objected, emotional prejudice. Hartford allowed limited statement. Eleanor approached the witness stand not to testify on fact, but to address remedy. She held the silver bars aloft. My husband's lesson may salvage hearts better than assets. She proposed a settlement. Children retain coastal cottages, worth millions, held in trust, but must complete 200 hours each of service at Queen's Haven, a financial literacy initiative, honoring Richard. If they declined, she would submit full ledger and recordings to criminal fraud investigators. Gasps. Hartford frowned. This was not standard procedure. Rayburn requested recess to consult clients. Hartford granted 30 minutes. In a side room, tension crackled. Celeste whispered, "He's still teaching." Tears streaked mascara. Michael pressed palms to temples. Rayburn argued they could risk criminal referral. Court might not indict. But uncertainty gnawed at Michael now. Ledger lines looked like chains. Outside, press corps sniffed rumor. Tweets erupted. Widow offers redemption deal. Inside, Celeste surprised them all. She accepted. "I can't bury father twice," she said. Michael hesitated, but the silver bar weighed bricks. "Fine," he muttered. Back in court, Rayburn announced conditional agreement. Hartford, wary of theatrics, ordered settlement terms in writing within 48 hours, estate partially unfrozen for trust transfer, and scheduled compliance hearing in 6 months. She adjourned, gavel echoing like an anchor hitting seabed, decision final but not final. As people filed out, Celeste approached Eleanor. Voice trembled. "Mother, did you orchestrate this?" Eleanor replied, "Your father did. I only delivered wind to his sails." Celeste nodded, something between apology and acceptance. Michael lingered near the doors, then crossed back. He pressed the silver bar into Eleanor's palm, engraved words outward. "Keep it until I've earned it," he said, voice barely above tidewash. Eleanor closed her fingers over the metal, warm now from his hand. Rain ceased by dusk, leaving the sky washed raw. Back at Kingsley Manor, silence settled gentle as snowfall. Eleanor entered Richard's study, settlement draft in her purse, silver bars on her desk. She lit the fireplace, flame tongues dancing around cedar logs. The portrait above the mantel seemed to glow, Richard's painted eyes crinkling with mischief. Celeste and Michael arrived together, not summoned but drawn. Celeste carried a shoebox. Inside, childhood letters Richard wrote from sea. She laid them on the rug. "I misread his compass," she whispered. Michael knelt. Holding one letter's brittle paper, Eleanor lowered herself beside them. For a moment none spoke, all eyes drifting to flames. Finally, Eleanor unfolded the last envelope, the mercy copy, and burned it unread. Ash spiraled upward. Michael watched, understanding seeping like tide into sand. His mother had chosen reconciliation over total conquest. He swallowed gratitude that chafed pride. Over the next days, tabloids recalibrated. Kingsley family reconciles. Service over salary. Online cynics scoffed, but local papers praised. Angus supervised removal of oxygen machine memories. Tapestry experts restored salt fog drapes. The manor exhaled. Court compliance required proof of service. Celeste scheduled budgeting classes at Queen's Haven, trembling first session but soon weaving piano analogies into amortization schedules. Elders adored her. Michael used shipping analytics skills to build software tracking scam calls. Volunteers dubbed him Captain Metric. Each hour chipped tarnish from silver bars awaiting redemption. Months later, on a spring evening fragrant with wisteria, Eleanor convened a small gathering in the orchard where children once chased fireflies. She returned silver bars to Michael and Celeste. "You have polished hearts," she said. Celeste's eyes brimmed. Michael traced engraved words, fingers steady. He slipped the bar into inner pocket, a talisman earned. Eleanor stepped aside, letting memory and mercy mingle beneath blossoming branches. She gazed at the horizon where ocean met sky, a seam Richard once called the world's longest handshake. Somewhere beyond, a ship's horn bellowed. She imagined Richard at the helm. Wind in hair, compass true. For the first time since frost-glazed roses, Eleanor felt spring inside her ribs. The fortune remained hers to steward, but the wealth she counted now glowed in her children's hesitant smiles and in the soft hush of past storms ceasing. Wind rustled leaves, echoing Richard's final lesson. Silver tarnishes. Love, when polished by truth and time, can shine like forged stars. The orchard was a cathedral of white blossoms the morning the Kingsley's truce cracked. Petals drifted on a southwesterly breeze like fragile verdicts, landing on ledger sheets spread across a rustic table. Michael and Celeste had invited Eleanor to review Queen's Haven's first quarter reports. 12 seniors kept out of predatory loans, 43 seminar graduates, a healthy surplus. It felt for once like talking numbers in sunlight instead of shadows. But at noon, a black Jaguar eased through the wrought iron gate, rolling across gravel with the hush of a stalking cat. Eleanor recognized the driver before he killed the engine. Victor Dane, Richard's former chief legal strategist, a man whose Armani suits were rumored to be lined with confidentiality clauses. He emerged, shoes crunching pedals, and offered a smile that warmed nothing. "Eleanor," he said, voice smooth as varnish, "I warned Richard that sentiment is the barnacle on legacy." His gaze slid to Michael and Celeste. "I bring news. A codicil. Dated 6 months prior to Richard's passing. Somehow it slipped the probate docket." Celeste's pulse stuttered. "Impossible," she whispered. Their settlement with Eleanor and the court's stay of criminal proceedings depended on finality. Michael's jaw set. Where was this codicil when everyone sifted the safe? Victor lifted a slim envelope, wax-sealed. "In my possession, under instructions to deliver only if Richard's estate fell into what he termed ethical uncertainty." He stressed the phrase, savoring its toxin. The document reroutes the maritime holdings 20% to an offshore trust sole trustee, me. Eleanor's fingers tightened on her cane. "Richard despised offshore gymnastics," she said. Victor's smile thinned. "People evolve." The codicil also names a successor beneficiary. Adrian Locke. Silence sprouted frost. Adrian Locke, Richard's estranged godson turned activist investor, had publicly criticized Kingsley Shipping for carbon sins. Last year, Locke shorted the company's stock and boasted on live television. If he now controlled a fifth of the empire, the fragile reconciliation would ignite. Victor handed over photocopies. "I plan to enter these into the record tomorrow." He turned toward the Jaguar, leaving the scent of imported tobacco in his wake. Celeste's stomach flipped. Michael gripped his sister's elbow. "We have 12 hours to verify authenticity," he muttered. Eleanor watched Victor drive away. Petals fluttered to the ground, trampled by disbelief. The orchard's spring hush felt suddenly like the prelude to artillery. She inhaled until the musky fragrance bit lungs. "Into the manor," she ordered. "We confirm every signature tonight." Inside Richard's study, sunlight carved blade-shaped beams across the desk, wood hewn from a decommissioned clipper. Michael spread the copies. The codicil bore Richard's looping penmanship, but something off. The R curved slightly rightward, less flourish than usual. Celeste accessed scans of verified documents on her laptop, overlaying signatures in transparency mode. The R deviation screamed forgery, yet forging ink was easier to prove than forging intent. The text referenced a shareholder meeting scheduled the week Richard entered hospice, a meeting that never occurred because Celeste had canceled it. Eleanor's eyes flicked to her. "Did you mention that cancellation to anyone outside family?" Celeste shook her head. "Only email to Victor." Regret pooled in her gut. She had forwarded minutes to him seeking reassurance. Now she saw the handshake hidden in his smile. Michael phoned Halsey, requesting urgent handwriting analysis. The executor promised to dispatch an expert from Boston by dawn. Eleanor perched on Richard's leather chair, the smell of worn hide and pipe tobacco stirring memory. She recalled Victor urging Richard during a 2017 gala to diversify into risk-managed clandestine instruments. Richard laughed him off. But men like Victor bank on eternity, wait until grief muffles memory, then strike. Dusk bled across stained glass as Celeste brewed coffee strong enough to raise ghosts. Michael combed email archives. Victor had quietly requested financial statements under the guise of estate planning. Each breadcrumb glinted now. He built a picture of our vulnerability, Michael said, voice clipped. Not just ours, Eleanor murmured. Queen's Haven, too. Locke will brand us hypocrites. Philanthropy bankrolled by old-world pollution. She imagined headlines eroding donor trust overnight. At midnight, the handwriting expert arrived, a brisk woman named Dr. Vera Quince. Under lamplight, she studied strokes, measuring slant, pressure, ink distribution. Signatures forged, she concluded. Pressure pattern inconsistent with neuropathy tremor logs from hospice week, but forging body text is trickier. I'll need Richard's diaries to compare lexical fingerprints. Eleanor produced the leather journals. While Vera examined syntax, Celeste paced. If the forgery holds long enough for Victor to litigate, Queen's Haven freezes and our compliance hours stall. Michael added, court could declare settlement void, reopen criminal fraud. The Orchard's piece felt like a memory already yellowed. Vera looked up at 2 a.m. Preliminary. Body text plagiarized from a 2015 shareholder letter. Victor likely copied phrasing. I'll need a sworn statement by morning. Relief flickered but failed to burn. Forgery proof meant confrontation, not closure. Celeste tapped her silver bar on the desk. We took Father's first lesson. Time for the second. Protect the harbor. Michael nodded. We expose Victor before he files. Eleanor's eyes sharpened. With reason. Not revenge outside, wind-rattled shutters. The manor, once repository of secrets, had become a command center. Yet beyond the gates, Victor prepared his move and Adrian Locke waited like a riptide, ready to pull skeletons into open water. Sun rose copper, clouds shredded. The family, unshowered and caffeine-wired, drove to Boston's district courthouse, Doctor. Quince's affidavit in triplicate. In the foyer glass atrium, they spotted Victor conversing with a slim man in a charcoal coat, Locke. Cameras converged like vultures. Locke's grin flashed predator white. Eleanor, he called, voice amplified by espresso and ambition. I always admired Richard's flair for plot twists. Reporters peppered them with questions. Forgery or forgotten codicil? Eco-activist inherits polluter's fortune? Eleanor raised a frauisu hand, voice measured. Mr. Dane's document is fraudulent. We have expert testimony, Locke smirked. Truth loves courtrooms, Mrs. Kingsley. Shall we let Lady Justice decide? Inside, Judge Hartford, summoned for emergency hearing, examined failings. Rayburn now represented Eleanor. Confusion reigned. Hartford's gaze sharpened like a mariner spotting shoals. Allegations of fraud compound my docket, she said. She granted each side 1 hour to present probable cause. Victor's counsel argued handwriting variances due to medication, produced pharmacy logs, but medication logs bolstered Vera's argument. Richard remained low dose until later test. Locke's attorney hammered climate hypocrisy, painting Eleanor as gatekeeper of dirty assets. Hartford halted him. Relevance to authenticity? He backpedaled. Vera testified, presenting overlays. Hartford leaned closer, noting tremor metrics. Victor blanched, then something unexpected. Michael requested to speak. Hartford allowed. He strode forward, silver bar visible in breast pocket. Your Honor, months ago I nearly destroyed my mother's reputation chasing money. I won't watch another man soil my father's legacy with Xerox ink. He presented emails Victor had sent him promising strategic pivots if they challenged the will. Gasps. Celeste produced her forwarded 2021 email thread where she'd inadvertently supplied meeting minutes. Victor's counsel objected. Attorney-client privilege. Hartford overruled. Privilege void in service of fraud. Victor's shoulders sagged. When Locke took the stand, he claimed ignorance, citing Victor as sole architect. Cross-examination revealed Locke's Shell NGO received a $100,000 consulting advance last month from a Cayman account tied to Victor. Hartford's pen scratched notes like a whetstone on steel. By afternoon, she ruled, codicil, manifest forgery. Victor's license referred for disciplinary review, preliminary injunction barring Locke from estate matters, and public exoneration of Eleanor issued forthwith. Gavel thundered. Reporters erupted. Outside drizzle began. A cleansing veil. Locke slipped into a car, media chasing. Victor was escorted away by court marshals, face ashen. Celeste exhaled deep enough to empty months of tension. Michael looked to Eleanor, eyes wet. Harbor held, he said. She gripped his arm, the silver bar between her fingers, because its keeper stood watch. Yet Story's heartbeat hadn't slowed. The hearing unearthed unsavory headlines. Kingsley Shipping's environmental record came under renewed fire. Locke's brief media blitz framed Eleanor's victory as oil money protecting itself. Queenshaven donors panicked. Within 24 hours, 3 pledged grants paused pending audit. At the Manor, crisis triage resumed. Eleanor drafted press statements. Celeste launched a social media series highlighting the Foundation's renewable energy scholarships. Michael partnered with marine scientists to publish transparency reports. But internet storms raged quicker than orchard breezes. One night, Eleanor found Michael in the boathouse staring at Richard's 1965 schooner, Compass Rose. Storm lantern hung overhead, painting him in gold and shadow. Thinking of selling her, he muttered. Offset emissions, a half joke, half penance. Eleanor touched the polished rail. Ships aren't villains. Captains choose routes. He turned, eyes rimmed with insomnia. I spent years wanting Dad's money. Didn't realize I wanted his approval more. Eleanor felt ribs tighten. He set hard lessons, yes. But he also believed course corrections matter more than maiden voyages. She handed him a sealed envelope she'd found among Richard's diaries. To Michael, open after storm. He opened it there. Inside, a single line in Richard's bold script, true north isn't a direction, it's a promise to recalibrate. Tears blurred ink. Across the orchard, Celeste sat at a laptop editing a Queenshaven video. She inserted archival footage of Richard christening a solar-powered cargo prototype, a project investors mocked in 2015. Her narration cracked, but she pressed on. Innovation is apology in motion. She scheduled the post, closed the computer, and for the first time reached for her silver bar without flinching. Weeks passed. Donor audits cleared Queenshaven, funds reinstated, Locke's NGO imploded under probe. Yet Eleanor sensed unfinished business. Justice addresses acts, not souls. She invited Michael and Celeste to the orchard bench where Richard used to read shipping charts by sunrise. A cedar box rested between blossoms. She opened it. The original silver bars, now welded at right angles, forming a cross-like anchor. At its center gleamed the denarius. Metalworker artisans had fused lesson and legacy. This is yours, she said, symbol of burden shared. Michael traced weld seams. Celeste whispered, anchor or weight? Both, Eleanor answered. Anchors hold steadfast and remind us water can drown. She turned the anchor and revealed a new engraving. Redeem the silver. Build better hulls. Beneath, smaller, RK. A gust showered petals upon them. For a heartbeat, the orchard smelled of salt and promise. Celeste lifted the anchor. It felt heavy, yes, but balanced. Michael tucked his barless pocket, a void replaced by purpose. That evening, they staged a town hall in Cape Saint, Julian's Harbor Lights. Celeste unveiled a scholarship for green shipping engineering. Michael pledged conversion of Kingsley cargo fleet to hybrid fuels within 5 years, bankrolled by divesting luxury properties. Reporters captured applause mixing with gull cries. Back at the manor, Eleanor ascended the grand staircase lit by sconces. At Richard's portrait, she paused. "Storm's easing," she whispered. Paint seemed to glow. She felt a settling. Neither triumph nor relief, but readiness for quieter seasons. She turned away when the night desk phone rang. Angus answered, then froze. "Madam," he called, voice trembling, "there's a man at the gate. Says he's Richard's half-brother. Claims he has rights." Eleanor's pulse dropped, then surged. Richard's mother's wartime child, rumored but never confirmed. Outside, headlights carved stripes across darkness. The orchard gate creaked under new weight. FOMO flicker. Every harbor breeds fog, and in fog shapes emerge, some bearing truth, others hidden knives. The story's compass spun again. A winter moon perched over Cape St. Julian like a silver coin balanced on black glass, tempting gravity to claim it. Eleanor watched the newcomer's headlights skim the orchard gate and felt an old ache at the base of her ribs, a warning knot that once announced offshore squalls. The man who stepped from the sedan carried no luggage, only a battered leather portfolio and a face that echoed Richard's profile so precisely her breath stalled. Salt-rimed hair, same angular chin, hazel eyes quick with the alertness of sailors who sleep beside storms. "I'm Nathaniel Dane, though Richard's mother knew me as Nathaniel Clark," he said, voice humble but planked with resolve. "Your husband and I shared a father, ma'am, and perhaps more." Behind Eleanor, Michael and Celeste hovered like parentheses around her uncertainty. Nathaniel's gaze drifted to them, softening. "I come for truth, not treasure." Angus ushered them into the music room, where twilight pooled between dusty piano keys. Eleanor offered tea. Nathaniel accepted, cradling the porcelain as if it might fracture under confession. He produced documents. A seaside parish birth record from 1959, letters from Richard's mother, coded in maritime coordinates, each one charting hush money paid to ensure silence. "I was raised in Nassau by an aunt who loved me well," Nathaniel said, "but I studied the shipping pages following your family like a vessel on open water." Celeste bristled. "And now that the flagship lists, you claim salvage rights?" Nathaniel met her eyes, gentle but unflinching. "I claim kin." He spoke of Richard visiting him secretly 10 years ago. Sailing compass rose south under alias Captain Smith, leaving behind a sealed envelope labeled, "Not if, but when." Nathaniel slid it across the table. Eleanor's pulse pounded beneath her collar. Inside, Richard's unmistakable handwriting. "Ellie, if Nathaniel brings this, welcome him. He is proof that mistakes can grow fruit if tended, not buried." Below a line. "Divide the fruit. Do not split the tree." Eleanor closed her eyes, feeling orchard perfume ghost the air, though the house windows were shut. Michael exhaled, tension leaking. "Father hit another branch," he muttered. Nathaniel leaned forward. "I won't sue. I want the anchor gift for my daughter. She's 16, curious about horizon lines. The anchor belongs to all of us." His request startled them. He sought not coin, but the welded symbol they'd forged from silver bars and denarius. Eleanor hesitated. The anchor was their badge of reconciliation, yet perhaps its strength lay in being shared. She nodded slowly. "If your claim proves valid, you'll receive more than an heirloom. You'll receive harbor." Nathaniel's eyes glassed. "Then let's chart the proof." Inspector Dorsey verified documents overnight. Handwriting expert Quince confirmed letters' authenticity. DNA tests required weeks, but truth felt already moored. Still, headlines erupted. Kingsley clan faces secret heir. Donor jitters returned. Queen's Haven again tottered. Exhaustion lapped at the family's footholds. Eleanor gathered Michael, Celeste, and Nathaniel under the orchard's skeletal branches. Breath silvered in crisp air. Distant gulls screamed prophetic warnings. "A tree doesn't choose its grafts," she said. "Wind does. We decide if graft bears fruit." She proposed a public forum, invite town and press, present Nathaniel as family, expand Queenshaven's mission to international maritime scholarships, honoring two brothers united by water. Michael eyed Celeste. Both nodded. Something had shifted. They defended legacy now, not plundered it. Yet storms seldom pass without last lightning. Victor Dane, awaiting disciplinary hearing, leaked forged emails implying Queenshaven laundered estate funds offshore. Social media churned. Sponsors threatened withdrawal within 48 hours. Celeste's hand shook over spreadsheets. Michael's insomnia returned. Nathaniel felt guilt coil. His arrival seemed to trigger chaos. Eleanor stood before Richard's portrait again, anchor cradled. "Divide fruit," she whispered. She decided to show the orchard to the world, literally. They would host an anchor night, an outdoor testimony where each silver component's story, unspooled before cameras, forging transparency into spectacle. "Sunlight is the compass," she told Angus. Preparations began, projection screens between apple trunks, flood lamps wired by volunteers, a live stream link courtesy of Michael's tech allies. Anchor night opened beneath a velvet sky stippled with Perseid meteors. Neighbors, donors, skeptics, journalists, hundreds arrived clutching blankets and questions. A dais faced the orchard rows lit like phantom ship lanes. On a pedestal, under a single spotlight, rested the welded anchor, gleaming with new polish. Its cross arms threw star-shaped flares, and at its heart, the denarius flickered like a pupil, watching every soul assemble. Eleanor stepped to the microphone, orchard wind threading silver hair across her cheeks. "Thank you for coming to witness not a defense but a confession," she began. She recalled Richard's secrecy, their children's betrayal, the forged codicil. She held up the ledger, flash drive, and burnt mercy envelope. "We burned half-truths to save whole hearts." The audience hushed into a single vast inhale. Celeste approached, reading her father's canceled shareholder note about carbon neutrality, admitting her complicity in undermining it. She announced the Kingsley Foundation's pivot, profits channeled to retrofit cargo ships with green propulsion. Cheers mingled with sobs. Michael followed, presenting open-source software detecting senior targeted scams, launching it for free. Screens projected code lines across tree trunks like auroral runes. Then Nathaniel ascended. He spoke of growing up on harbor docks, learning to read tide before text, dreaming of the brother he traced through newspaper clippings. He produced a concertina, well-worn leather, and played a haunting sea shanty Richard once hummed under his breath. Petals shook loose, spiraling like silent applause. When the last note quivered away, Nathaniel touched the anchor. "My daughter will polish this," he said, voice rough with tears. "So rust reminds her that steel endures storms, yet needs steady hands." Inspector Dorsey announced investigation results. Victor Dane acted alone. Out-of-context emails were digitally spliced. A live ticker screen tallied reinstated donations in real time. The anchor's denarius glinted each time the number ticked upward. But at the orchard's edge, Victor lurked, raincoat collar hiding a smirk. He'd slipped security, armed with a last-ditch whisper, a tabloid reporter eager for scandal. Victor handed him a USB, deepfake footage implying Eleanor bribed Dorsey. Flash drive cold, ambition hot, the reporter hurried toward stage right, yet Angus intercepted. "Evening, sir," he said, voice mild as tea yet iron filament strong. He guided the reporter behind the barn where Dorsey waited, arrest warrant ready. Victor's scheme died in a flashlight beam, silent but for the orchard winds. As meteors streaked overhead, Eleanor felt the knot beneath her ribs loosen. She invited her children and Nathaniel to grip the anchor together. Cameras flashed. Their joined hands made a cross-shaped shadow on the grass, proof that silver unshared tarnishes, but shared becomes alloy. Later, under strings of orchard lanterns, Celeste found Eleanor, gazing at stars. "Mother," she whispered, "I feared Father's final lesson would jail us." Eleanor smiled soft. "Lessons free before they bind." Celeste glanced at Michael telling ghost story jokes to volunteers, at Nathaniel FaceTiming his daughter, anchor gleaming between them. "He freed us." Inside the manor, Eleanor opened Richard's last diary. A blank page greeted her. She set pen to paper. A harbor is not walls that keep storms out. It is lights that guide ships home. She closed the diary, storing it beside Vera's authentication reports. Spring returned, scattering pink confetti across Cape St. Julian's cliffs. Queen's Haven rebranded to Compass Haven, reflecting twin brothers' legacy. First scholarship recipient. Nathaniel's daughter, Amaya, to study ocean current energy. At the launch ceremony, Michael presented her the denarius necklace. The coin scaled for a new bearer. She promised to wear it until her research spawned 1 turbine per piece of silver Judas once counted. Eleanor strolled the orchard at dawn, cane-tapping rhythm. Blossoms buzzed with bees, upside-down lanterns of promise. She approached the memorial bench beneath the oldest apple tree, Richard's name and now Nathaniel's mother's initials carved side by side, a graft in wood. She sat closing eyes, letting sunlight paint eyelids red gold. Footsteps rustled. Michael arrived carrying a small wooden box. "For you," he said. Inside, a compass rose crafted from leftover anchor shavings, its needle fashioned from Celeste's piano wire. On the back, the engraving, "True North recalibrates daily." Eleanor traced the points. Tears blurred, fell, dew joining dew. But these tears chilled no marrow, they watered roots. She turned to see Celeste guiding local school children between rows, teaching them how trees bear more fruit when branches are thinned in winter. Farther off, Nathaniel and Angus discussed converting the boathouse into a maritime museum where traditional sail could meet hydrogen futures. Bees droned, gulls cried. The world spun, storm-scarred yet seated. That evening, as lanterns clicked on, Eleanor addressed a small circle of mothers invited from a domestic support group. Some had sons lost to opiates, daughters drowning in debt, hearts sore with disappointment. She told them not the Kingsley's Ledger story, but the Orchard story, about pruning to heal, about anchors that pull unless you forge them into beams. Her voice shook, but in the flicker of their relieved smiles, she felt storms quell. Night wrapped the manor. Eleanor climbed stairs slower now, but heart lighter. At her bedside stood the welded anchor, retired from dais, but sentinel still. She touched its silver, felt warmth from countless hands and budding futures. Wind rattled windows, reminder storms patrol eternally, but their howl no longer sounded like a verdict, only weather. She lay down, quilt of compass roses over her, and whispered to darkness, "Divide fruit, keep tree." Sleep rose like a tide. In dream, Richard's schooner sailed horizon, sails stitched of orchard blossoms, denarius star guiding prow. On deck children, 3 now, laughed, anchor shining at bow, weight and light together. True North recalibrated once more, and the voyage continued, forever turning storms into soil.